Shaitas of today. We're holding in the portion of Tzav, holding on chapter 6, verse number 1 in the book of Vayikra. God spoke to Moshe, saying, Tzav is born of command, Aaron and his sons. Lamer, saying, this is the law of Ha'ela. Ha'ela, this is a burnt offering, Ala Meikter, which is put on the altar. Ala Mizbech, La Meikter is on the fire that's on the altar. Kala Laila can burn the entire night. Ada Beik until the morning. Ve'esha Mizbech took a bay and the fire shall burn upon it. Now she says, Tzav, the concept of Tzav is to a concept of a person should be meticulous, miyad, today and forever. So that's why the Tzav is forever. Rabbi Shimon said that the Torah had to forewarn this mitzvah because everybody loses, so to say, on this mitzvah. The kohen doesn't receive anything from this carbon. This passage comes to teach us that the burning of a sacrifice, fats and parts of the animal is valid through the entire night. This passage also teaches us regarding the invalid sacrifice that if one had already brought them to the altar, must be taken down, and which one, if it's brought to the altar, need not be taken down. So we know which one is taken down and which one is not taken down. Because every instance of it, whenever it says Torah, this Torah comes to include. Thus here too, it says here, this is one law. Even invalid ones, namely, if they had already been brought up and they became invalid when they were brought up, they stay on the Mizbeach. Here, Ha'ela comes to exclude Reivas HaNirva. If there was bestiality done to this animal, that means it was already done with the animal before it came to the Beis Hamikdash, so it would be invalid. Even if it's on the altar, you have to take it off. And the kohen will put on the linen tunics, and he will put on linen trousers on his flesh. Will take off the ashes, which the Aish ate the oila, ala mizbech, which was on the altar. Where some ate the mizbech, will put it near the altar. Now she says midai bad is a container. Why does it say midai? Because it has to fit the kohen. Al Basari, there shouldn't be anything separating from him from this garment and his flesh. V'hedem zadeshin, he would go into the core of the flame, of the fire, of the ashes, and he would grab out a scoop of ashes. As the deshin, that the fire made into ashes, and from that he takes out, doesn't take away from the fire. He takes from the ashes that the fire made ashes. Alam Mizbeach, what means on the altar, if he found any parts of the animal in the ashes, he would put it back on the Mizbeach. He would continue to make sure that it burnt on the Mizbeach. Verse number 4. He takes off his garments, he puts on other garments. He says the deshen, he takes out the deshen, this ashes, he takes it out to the outside of the camp. Al Makam Tor, to a pure place. Now she says, this is not obligation to every day. There were two kinds of cleansing of the dashes. Every day you had to take out a small part called harama, take out a small part of ashes from the Mizbeach. But then, if there was a lot of ash in the Mizbeach, came to a situation, it was too much ash in the Mizbeach, that was this mitzvah, when they had that mitzvah to take off the ashes and bury it in a pure place. So why does the Torah tell us this? As Rashi says, the Torah tells us it's not nice for the person that is the chef should come and serve the king. So over here, he changed his garments. When he dealt with ashes, he changed his garments to take it outside. This was the deshen that was in the middle of the fire. And as Rashi said, it's not an obligation every day to do this mitzvah. This mitzvah of taking off the ashes. The fire in the altar shall burn. The fire in the altar shall burn continuously. You shall not put it out. Will be like it's a baker, and the kohen should also put wood on the fire every morning. Like to put on it the burnt offering. And then he puts on the fats of the shlamim, the peace offering. Now she says, over here you see a couple of times it says ve'esh. It comes to tell us that there is a machlekes in the Gemara that how many fires was on the altar. There was some say 3, some say 4, etc. What does the Torah tell us? You put on the Eilah. We know that you put on the Eilah. It comes to tell us that the first offering that was bought in the Beis Hamikdash was the Korban Eilah. It was the first. Nothing was bought beforehand, and that was the first offering that was bought. Chel v'hashlamim. Now she says, if you bring fat to the shlamim, you're not obligated to bring fat to the shlamim, but if you bring it, now she says, you can't. So from here also we learn that nothing can go before the Eilah and nothing go after the mincha Eilah that was brought every single day. There should be a continuous fire on the altar. It should never go out. Now she says, what does it mean that it's a continuous fire? This is the fire that lit the menorah. That says la'alis ned tamid. It was brought up from the fire of the altar. Why does the Torah tell us you're not allowed to put it out? It comes to tell us a law that if you put it out, you've done a negative commandment. And verse number 7, this is the law of a meal offering. The sons of Aaron will bring it. If Hashem before God, I'll pass his bear to the face of the altar. Now she says, why does it say Torah mincha? The law, the Torah means that it has to be by every mincha. That to tell us that there's one thing that's by every mincha, and that is shemen, oil, levina, frankincense, which is written by a mincha. And every mincha needed to have these ingredients. Hakavesa, where do you bring it? It refers to bringing the offering near the southwestern corner of the altar. Now Hashem, this refers. Now she says to the western side of the altar. Now Mizbeach, this comes to tell us that one second. Verse number 8. And he shall take it from its fist, misalta, miselas mincha, mishamna, from all the oil, because kalalavaina and all the frankincense. Asher al mincha, what's on this mincha? And he shall bring it on the altar. It's a pleasing fragrance, remembrance to God. Now she says, from the one that is the most, the choicest place. So now she says it should make a measure for a fistful. Now we already know that the flour scoop was mixed with oil. So why does it say it again? But when we learn that the fistful must be taken from the place with the meal offering. In the meal offering, where there's an abundance of oil, to make sure that there's an abundance of oil. That's called a lavina. Now she says, meaning he must gather up all its frankincense after the scooping and cause it to go up in smoke. And didn't the Torah specify, stated here the law. Only in the case of a meal offering, mentioned in Vayikra. Scripture found it necessary, Torah found it necessary to repeat the section, including this law, to include all minchas, that you had to do the same thing. Verse number 9, I said, is a mincha, anything left over from this mincha. Yechlu Aaron Abanav, shall Aaron and his sons eat matzahs to echel. It needs to be matzahs, needs to be unleavened. The makam kodesh, they have to eat in the Beis Hamikdash, b'chatzar elamed, in the courtyard of the tent. Yechlu, they must eat. Now she says, makam, what is the holy place? Is the courtyard of the tent. Verse number 10. It shall not be baked 11. As their portion, I have given it to them to my fire offering. It's holy of holies. It's like a sin offering. Now she says, you must not bake leaven, the portion, You're not allowed to have any kind of leaven or dvash, as Rashi says, as the Torah says, no leaven or no honey. Yechatas ka'ashin, this refers to the two different cases, like a sin offering, referred to the meal offering of a sinner. Called verse number 11, called Zachar ben Aaron, all male of the son of Adam. It should be an everlasting law to all their generation. Hashem for the fire of God. Anybody who anything that touches your sacrifice shall become holy. Now she says, Kol Zachar afilu balmum, even an unqualified payin can eat from a carbon. The question is, why does he need to tell us? As we know already that Torah tells us later that he can eat it. It comes to tell us that you have to give a balmum even to the division of the carbon. You have to give it to him. The mincha. Sacrifice that have a lesser degree of holiness or ordinary food that comes in contact with a meal offering and absorbs of it becomes Kaddish. Yigdash, what it means that it becomes holy, it comes like it. And now it only can be eaten in the Beis HaMikdash. It can only be eaten by a kohen, etc., etc. That completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We're holding in today. We start middle of chapter 37, and we continue this. An additional virtue in a mitzvah involving action. After that, it's teaching us the greatness of mitzvahs. Ma'aseh is the mitzvah that has connection with action, aside from the function of elevating one's animal soul, which was mentioned in the beginning of this chapter. Vitalization of the soul's energy, clothed in the utterance of the letters of one's speech, in Torah study, or in prayer, anything like that. Mitzvahs, or the energy clothed in the performance of a mitzvah, mamish, a physical mitzvah, giving tzedakah. Harekol gidule v'chayosim adam derives its entire growth and vitality from the blood. Shumeklipas nega, because ultimately you cannot speak. You cannot do anything without your blood, which is symbolic to your animal soul. And Pashid, you cannot do anything. You cannot speak. You cannot think as a human being without your nefesh abamis. Because ultimately they are under the domain of klipat noga, a covering that shines, and they draw the vitality from it. So therefore, that's a human being. A human being is an animal soul. And therefore, that's why it's the ultimate meaning that the Eibishter created an animal soul, which is the human being, and it's flesh and blood. The Eibishter created this animal soul to be the right vessel. And that's why it's a klippat noga, it's a klippa that shines, because it can be, and it is, the right vessel for God to shine in it. And now, with the person performs the mitzvah, with the energy derived from this food and drink, because see, that's what makes him alive. This klippa is transformed from evil to good. And it absorbs, and it's absorbed in holiness. Through the means of the energy of the animal soul that grows within from it. Because it clothes itself in these letters of the words of Torah or in the performance of mitzvahs, which is actually constitute the unveiled expression of the inner aspect of God's will. So their vitality, the vitality of expended in the performance of mitzvahs is also absorbed, like mitzvahs themselves, into the blessed light of which his will expressed in the mitzvah. So thus, like the mitzvah becomes part of godliness, so too the human being that does the mitzvah becomes part of godliness. And with their vitality, the energy of the animal soul likewise elevated, absorbed into the infinite light. And since the energy necessary performing mitzvahs was supplied by food and drink, the vitality of the food and drink is likewise observed in Ein Sof, together with the mitzvah they performed, and that made it possible. The food and drink that made this possible. And then through this, ultimately, the entire process is elevated. Through ultimately the person, the flesh, his food, everything that constitutes a human being, all his talents, all his capabilities, all himself. Ultimately everything. Because when I eat bread, how many people and how many things in the world was involved in making this bread? And now with the koyach of this bread, with the strength of this bread, I elevate the entire world. And that's the beauty of doing a mitzvah. That's the beauty of learning Torah. That's the beauty of saying words of davening, etc., etc. Simply elevate my animal soul, elevate my body, elevate everything that gives me the capability to do that, which is all the food I eat and everything in the world that gives me everything that needs to be elevated. And ultimately, I elevate the whole world. And that completes the Tanya for today. Today is Purim, 14th day of the month, which is chapter 72 to chapter 76. There's no Tanya class today at 10 o'clock. Please, everybody, make sure that you hear the Megillah. Wherever you are, make sure you go to a shul or places where they're going to lay the Megillah. At Chabad, we're laying the Megillah here at around 9 o'clock. Make sure you be here at 9 o'clock or at 11 o'clock or at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or at 4:30. The last time we were leading the Megillah here in this Chabad is at 4:30. I wish you all a wonderful Purim, a happy Purim. May this day be a day that transforms everything. Transforms everything, transforms the world. Will merit to all have simcha, joy and happiness and gladness. God bless you all. Have a wonderful and beautiful Purim. We'll see you tomorrow, Shushan Purim, at 8 a.m. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful